Hello and welcome back. Today we are looking at the game Thief. It is a stealth game which is free on the Epic Games Store until the 11th of April. It has some pretty major flaws, but also some really nice upsides, and we're going to be looking at all of that later. So as you may see, we're a thief. For the general game, it is the fourth installment, and the second reboot, and it was developed by Eidos Montreal and then published by Eidos Interactive Corporation. Normally it costs about $19, but it is often on sale on Steam, for example, for around $3. Now, you may think, looking at this, which is the first part of the tutorial, that the gameplay is really boring, just grabbing everything you can. And while the first sensitivity settings are quite weird, there are more things you can do. So, while we open this window here, let me talk a bit about the story. So, there are multiple main and side quests connected by this city, and it has and it has some pretty so while you're trying to steal stuff, you may come across little puzzles such as lockpicking right here, which is pretty easy. You just feel around until you find the spot for it, and then you press your interaction key, and then you do this just a couple of times. So move your mouse, and most of the puzzles in this game are pretty easy to overcome. Regarding the story, there are multiple of characters in this game. Sadly, most of them are pretty flat, and the voice acting is a bit weak, similar to the voice acting of our character. And let me just do this part here. So this part, the rock climbing, is a very good example that even though the game has not many controls, some things are quite weird, just as dropping from ledges. Sometimes you just walk off them, sometimes you drop down, and sometimes you jump, and there's not really any coherency in that. And coming off dropping, the other thing, mantling, most of the time works, but only at specific places where the developer put in the mechanic, like this beam. If you want to mantle across a crate you find in the streets, most of the time it's not possible, and that is fairly weird. Another problem the city has is it's a pretty big city with many small corridors and walkways, but there are very frequent loading screens which disturb your gameplay quite a bit, which is quite sad, because given that the gameplay can get pretty boring and pretty disrupted. Another problem is that the main missions are sometimes a bit boring, but on the other hand, some of the side missions you can do are really good designed. So you kind of just have to go through the city, wait in the loading screens, and experience all of the missions. Coming to that, my first playthrough, which was a mix of stealth and aggressive gameplay, was around 16 hours, a bit more, which is acceptable for a game of this size. And I do have to say, after playing that, the stealth mechanics in this game are really good. But on the other hand, if someone sees you and you get into melee and more aggressive gameplay, it's quite repetitive. It's a mix of waiting till the enemy attacks, then you can dodge that attack, and then you can attack one time, and it's kind of the cycle which favors the stealth play, I would say, but it also then lags in ways you can play the game, because stealth is kind of the only way that is fun, and you always have to do stealth, which has the problem that the game is quite slow, because you have to wait for the guards, or you have to wait so you don't get seen or if someone walks by. So all in all, I've got to say, there are some other upsides which are outside the game. The difficulty settings are quite fluent. As you can see, if we go to the custom difficulty settings, we can first say our general difficulty, and if you want, then you can enable or disable some other feature that make it more or less challenging. So the difficulty is really fluent, and if you want to, you can play on master with everything on, which is really hard, and I've tried it once, and I have to say I have too little experience in this game, and I was not really able to do it, even on the first handful of missions. Coming back to the main menu, there is also the challenge mode, which is quite fun. There are 2 missions which you can start right from here, and after you're finished with the story, you can of course start them, but you can also do it in between, and they are quite a bit of fun, but they don't make up for all of the lacking parts of the game. I also have to say, some of the level design is a bit one-sided and also sometimes a bit claustrophobic. Like, there is mainly just one way to go and you're not really free in your choices. And one other thing I have to say about the loading screens is that even though I have a pretty good PC, they sometimes took around half a minute, which is quite disturbing in the middle of gameplay. So after all, I've got to say, as a review, I would give this game around 2 out of 5 points, The stealth mechanics it has are really good, and it is quite a bit of fun if you go for the stealth route. But sadly, it is really one-sided and you only have this one option. And then there's the thing about the loading screens, the characters, and the general world building. So I hope you enjoyed this review. If you're interested in playing this game, or if you are a fan of stealth games, you might really like this one. You can get it for free, as I said, on the Epic Games Store until the 11th of April. Or if you keep an eye out, you might get it for around $3 on sale, which is quite frequent on Steam.